Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're talking about how to get started on YouTube using just your iPhone. And so this video is shot entirely on my iPhone XS Max. And I'm gonna be sharing a few tips and tricks, but hopefully trying to make the point that if you're thinking of starting a YouTube channel or getting into filming and stuff, you don't need to wait for, a fancy camera or save up for this, that, and the other. All you need is your iPhone or, Android phone if you're one of those heathens. And you can just get started pretty much from now on, provided, you keep a few things in mind. So yeah, in this video, we're gonna be talking about 5 things. We're gonna be talking about video quality using a certain app, audio quality using external microphones, lighting, framing, and additional lenses and kind of the equipment that you might like to add on top of it. But really, you can just get started using just your iPhone, and hopefully I'll be making that point throughout this video. So let's start with video quality, and that's obviously the most important thing, although some people say audio quality is more important, but let's ignore that. Video quality, you don't really get from the default iPhone camera app, and usually, and from most, I don't know much about Android phones, but I suspect their default camera apps are not great either. The app that you want to use, the app that most people recommend, that I would recommend, is called Filmic Pro. And the great thing about this app is that you can manually control a lot of the camera settings. So there's a few different settings that we want to change when we open up the app, and the main one is the frame rate. Normally with iPhone videos, they film in 30 frames per second, but it's either 24 or 25 frames per second that look more cinematic. Like 30 is just a little bit too smooth and looks kind of like iPhone video, which isn't really the vibe that we want to be going for, unless you want to go for that vibe, in which case, you do you. But at the moment, I'm shooting in 25 frames per second, and that is the same frame rate that I shoot with my fancy cameras and stuff, and hopefully that looks quite reasonable. Secondly, we want to be adjusting the resolution and the bit rate. And this sounds complicated, but basically we want to film in 4K resolution because we might as well, and most modern phones offer that. And then we want to crank up the bit rate to as high as it possibly can be. On iPhones, this is called Filmic Extreme. I think on Android, it's like 100 megabits per second, something along those lines. That basically means there's more information encoded, but it takes up a bigger file size. High file size, better quality, that's the way that I would recommend going personally. And then just a few other things. You wanna set your white balance so that it doesn't vary massively, and you wanna change your shutter speed to 1/50th of a second. And there's this kind of rule with filmmaking that if your frame rate is 25, you want your shutter to be double that, so 1/50. This is called the 180-degree rule. Essentially, that gives you the best amount of, the most cinematic motion blur. Like when I'm moving my hands like this, I tend to talk a lot with my hands. This should hopefully look semi-natural, fairly natural. Whereas if I cranked up the shutter speed really high, like 1/200, it would look a lot more choppy because it's not quite what we're used to seeing. This all sounds complicated, but essentially once you've got these settings set once, you can just save a preset on Filmic Pro, then you never have to touch them again. And there's tons and tons of tutorials on YouTube where they show you in depth how to get Filmic Pro and get the right settings for your liking. But yeah, most important thing for decent video quality is to not use the default camera app, but to use something like Filmic Pro instead, and hopefully that'll make a big difference to video quality. Okay, now let's talk about audio, and arguably audio is even more important than video quality because people will sit through a low quality video if the audio is good, but if you have the best quality video in the world but your audio is crap, then no one's gonna wanna watch your video. And I've got to be honest, I have kind of been cheating a little bit in this video in that I've been recording with my iPhone, but I've actually been externally recording audio using this Rode NTG4 mic connected to an external audio recorder. But now I'm going to show you what it sounds like using just the iPhone, just so, if you don't have this sort of setup, you don't really need it. So this is what the audio from the iPhone sounds like just on its own. Hopefully you'll hear the difference between this expensive audio setup and the iPhone recording, but hopefully you'll see that actually if you were just getting started on YouTube with just your phone, this actually wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't be the sort of audio quality that people would be like, oh God, that's garbage, I'm gonna turn it off immediately. But luckily there is kind of a middle ground between standard iPhone with nothing attached and this kind of fancy audio setup, and that is using a small microphone like the Rode VideoMicro, and that sets you back by about $30 or $40. So I'm gonna plug that in and we'll show you what the audio sounds like from the Rode VideoMicro. So at the moment I have to stop this recording and unplug my phone. Okay, so let's get rid of that lightning cable, and I'm using the Rode VideoMicro, about $50, $40, something like that from Amazon, and I've connected it to the iPhone using the lightning to headphone adapter that comes with the phone, and this is like this other Rode cable that costs about $7. So for about $50, we've got this microphone connected, and I've got it mounted to this random phone mount that you can get off Amazon for about 10 quid or $10 or whatever your currency is. So now let's hear what it sounds like with this microphone. Okay, so this is a test of the Rode VideoMicro attached to the iPhone, and you can hopefully see that this hopefully sounds a little bit better than default iPhone microphone, but hopefully it doesn't sound quite as good as the audio coming directly from this audio recorder. All right, now let's talk about lighting, and as you can see, I'm sitting next to this massive ass window, which is providing some pretty decent natural lighting. So even if you don't have the money to spend on a lighting setup or lighting rig or whatever, you can just sit next to a window and hopefully this looks pretty reasonable. Then if I wanted to, I could get my kind of fancy Aperture 120D Mark II lights, and I could kind of bring that in, swing that around so it's pointing at me. I could turn it on using the remote control, wherever it is. And then yeah, if I wanted to, I could actually change the ISO setting on Filmic Pro so that it dims the lightness a bit. But you'll see this doesn't actually make that much difference to the video. Like, lighting is super important, but just something like standing next to a big window has quite a good effect. So let's see if I can kind of dim this light so that it looks a bit better. Something like that. So this is with light, this is without light. Honestly, I don't know, it doesn't really make that much difference. So just big window, lighting is pretty much sorted. And again, lighting doesn't need to be one of those things like if you watch, for example, my behind the scenes video or Peter McKinnon's video showing how he makes his videos, it can look quite intimidating seeing these big, sort of expensive light domes and stuff. But really, you don't need that to get started. And over time, yeah, it's definitely worth investing in a light. And I'm really glad I spent the $1,000 that it cost for this particular light. But you know, you get pretty decent results just sitting next to a window, so that's absolutely fine. Okay, fourthly, let's talk about framing the shot. And I don't know if you can see, but I've got my iPhone connected to my MacBook and I'm just using QuickTime Player. And QuickTime Player is allowing me to mimic what's on my iPhone screen. I think using the selfie camera on the iPhone gives you less good picture quality. So I'm using the normal camera, but to see what I'm filming, I've got it connected to my laptop. And therefore I don't need anything fancy like, you know, a monitor. You know, I've got a small HD monitor that costs £500 that attaches to a camera. You know, this is basically doing the exact same thing. Most of us have a laptop, most of us have some kind of device we can attach our phones to. And so you can mirror the screen and monitor yourself that way. And therefore you can get all of the framing that you want. You don't have to be kind of off to the side because you couldn't see yourself. Yeah, this is a very easy way to do the framing. And then also in terms of extra gear. So over here, I've got the iPhone sitting on this random no brand phone tripod thing. I'll put a few links to Amazon in the video description. The important thing about that is that it's got a cold shoe mount on the top, which means this Rode VideoMicro can attach nicely to it. So yeah, this is the microphone, it's tiny, and it just screws nicely onto this mount, which is a very easy way to attach it to the phone. And then if I were to vlog, for example, I could just take this setup, take it off the tripod, and I'd have a vlog setup with decent audio because I've got the microphone connected to it. And then that's just connected to a standard tripod. I just happen to have these lying around. This is the Joby GorillaPod head. Again, it doesn't really matter what I'm using. The point is that you can connect any tripod to your phone, provided you have one of these phone mounts. And it's a very easy thing to get that, you know, you can buy for a few dollars off Amazon. Like if you want, you can go really ghetto and end up just kind of propping up your phone on a stack of textbooks or anything like that. But you know, if you're serious about starting YouTube, my recommendation is that you get started with just your phone, and over time you can then add stuff to it, so that it's never an excuse that, oh, I can't afford camera gear, as an excuse as to why you're not starting a YouTube channel. It's just like an internal battle of, oh, okay, I need to get over the fear of looking foolish. I need to get over my fear of public speaking. I'm just gonna do it, because starting a YouTube channel is great and leads to lots of good things happening in life. And finally, I just want to talk about extra lenses that you can use. So this is an extra wide angle lens that I got from Sandmark. They very kindly sent it to me. It's not sponsored, but yeah, they did send me the lenses to review. And this is quite nice because if you attach it to the iPhone, like I'm gonna do now, then what it does once it's attached is that it makes the angle more wide. So if we go back to the iPhone shot, you'll see that this is now a much wider shot. I look further back, you can now see the microphone, and I'm just kind of monitoring this on the laptop behind me. So what I would do in this case is I would move the table closer. Hopefully then you won't see all of the crap that's behind, and we can just see the iPad. I move a little closer, I move this microphone a bit more up, make sure it stays out of the frame, but still gets decent audio quality because it's close enough to my mouth. Get this camera out of the way, get this corporation tax thing out of the way. You'll see I have to change up the framing slightly, but some people prefer this sort of more wide angle way of filming. And actually, you know, I'm not a huge fan of being so far away from the camera. So what I normally do is I use a wide angle lens, even on my normal camera, and then I sit quite close to it. And that has the benefit that if you're not using an external audio recorder like I am, then you're closer to something like the iPhone or the Rode VideoMicro, which means you get slightly better audio quality because you're closer to the camera because you're using a wide angle lens. So, I mean, Sandmark have loads of other lenses as well. They also sent me their macro lens and a tele lens and the anamorphic lens, which I'm gonna play around with at some point. But yeah, if you want to go for a slightly different look than the standard iPhone framing, you can use like an external lens or something, just kind of screw it onto your phone and then it works. But yeah, hopefully the main point I've made on this video is that you don't actually need a lot to start a YouTube channel and to start filming. Like, you can just do everything with just your iPhone. Yeah, the audio is not going to sound that amazing, but it's perfect to get started, and you can always upgrade later on to the Rode VideoMicro, and you can then spend an extra $20 getting a tripod. And then if you really want, you can spend $50 on a lighting setup. And over time, you build up your YouTube thing. And then eventually, if you really want to, you can like graduate to getting a camera. But I've spoken to a lot of people, people messaging me via Instagram and stuff, and asking for advice for things like starting YouTube channels. And a distressing amount of them have said stuff like, oh, I'd love to start a YouTube channel, but I don't have the money for a camera, even though they've got like the latest iPhone or like a Google Pixel or like a Samsung Galaxy S8, S9, S10, whatever. You know, all modern phones are capable of filming in very, very good quality. They all have reasonable audio as well, and you can always upgrade audio if you really feel like it. But yeah, hopefully this video gave you a little bit of a taste, a bit of a flavor about how to get started on YouTube using just your iPhone. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Over here, we've also got a few videos about, in this Creator Diaries series where I talk about the behind the scenes of my own setup, including all the camera gear and stuff. So have a look at that if you feel like it. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.